All right. Hello to those who are just joining us. We're going to give it a few minutes here to let others find the link, and we'll get started very shortly. But thanks for being on time, and hope you enjoyed tonight's JUMPinar. All right. Hello again to everybody just joining on. We're going to give it another minute or two here just to let everybody find the link. But thanks for joining, and we'll get started soon. Alrighty. So before we get started, I just want to give a quick plug for the Jumpstart Philly loan program. So we are accepting loan applications, and we're able to get back to you really fast. And if you're a new developer, or this is one of your first projects that you're completing and you're looking for financing, we're your lender. So please reach out to Jumpstart Philly, or go to jumpstartphilly.com, and you can check out all our loans, terms, guidelines, and all that good stuff. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. It's Derek, DEREK, at phillyofficeretail.com. And I'll answer any questions you might have, but everything's at the website. So I'll send that link as well, and definitely go check it out, and look forward to seeing your loan applications. But we have 25 people on the call right now, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and introduce the topic tonight. So thanks everybody for joining us. This is our JUMPinar series, which we host a couple times a month on either Zoom like this or in person at our office. And we host a variety of guest speakers on specific topics in real estate development that we think deserve a deep dive conversation with. These are things that we might mention or briefly go over in our training program, but this is our opportunity to really dig deeper and talk to some experts and get their perspective on the topic as well. So tonight we're talking about, oh, I don't think I have the flyer for that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Tonight, we're talking about project feasibility with Core Designed, and we have Mark Wallace and Jeffy Thomas here tonight. And we're really excited to have them. I spoke with Jeffy and Mark a while back, and we got this on the schedule, and then recently touched base again to hash out the specifics of what we think new developers need to know about project feasibility. And that's a broad term, so I'm going to let them kind of introduce the idea of that and give their definition of what makes a project feasible. But we're talking about the due diligence period and that phase of property walkthroughs and construction budgeting and trying to make layout changes and all that phase of the project. And we'll dive further in a minute, but I just want to give Jeffy and Mark a second here to introduce themselves. And again, I appreciate you being on here and excited for the conversation.
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for having us. Thank you, Derek, for having us. I'll introduce myself. My name is Jeffy Thomas, one of the employees here at Core Design Architecture. I work on the marketing and project assistant, but just a small little bit about Core. Core was founded in 2015 by Kevin Correco, and we're based out of Philadelphia and New Jersey. And we're a firm that's experienced in a wide array of project types. It ranges from residential development, from single family to multifamily, mixed use, and even healthcare. We also do commercial. So we have a good amount of experience in a lot of areas. And we also strive to be technology forward. And I mean that we are looking to use leading technologies in our everyday application to make our processes more efficient and better products for our clients.
Wonderful. Thanks. And I'll ask some more questions about Core in a minute, but Mark, if you want to introduce yourself, thanks for being here.
Yeah, my name is Mark Wallace. I'm a senior project architect at Core Design. I joined the company in 2016, a year after Kevin founded it. Been practicing in the Philly area since '05. It's been we know our way around the city quite a bit.
Great. Awesome. So, Jeffy, if you could just tell me a little bit, I think the best way to learn about an organization is to talk about the projects they've worked on and sort of what they've achieved in the past. And I know developers or architects love talking about their projects. So
Yeah,
why don't you tell us
They're all our babies.
they are. They are.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about some projects that you enjoyed working on with Core, or what you think would give a good rundown of the sorts of projects you work on for the audience?
Sure. So when we first started, some of our projects were doing BIM work, which is building information modeling, for high-end projects in New York. And what we were doing there was taking the models from these projects and modeling it all. So we're modeling the building, the HVAC, the electrical, and using our laser scanner also to bring in that kind of information, and just making sure that there's no clashes, that everything works, so that when they go into the field, they're saving time and money. And those were really cool, right? Because you get to go and be like walking into places that I don't know if I'll ever set foot into again. And then on my end, I work on a lot of the healthcare side of projects at Core. So we've done projects ranging from outpatient offices, like ENT and GI offices, to a what was it, an MRI CAT scan room, and
The
so
LINAC.
a LINAC, yeah,
Yeah.
linear accelerator. So just like crazy projects that have like tolerances and things that we have to worry about that are very, very small. I think I was just talking with Mark before we got on this, and I was like, what were the tolerances for that project in New York? And he was just like, I think it was 1/16 of an inch. So we are talking about using the laser scanner technology there for like just making sure that, this is exactly where it is. But,
Sure. Yeah.
are...
And definitely you can tell from your website and the project you completed, that's a focus in healthcare. What about like residential rehabs, any new construction, like residential or anything commercial?
I'll let Mark take that one.
Yeah, I mean, we're currently working on a suburban development that is 88 residences. We have in the Parkside area of the city, we have a 100-unit building going up. And then we have a bunch of single families in Kensington and Fishtown. So it really runs the gamut. We do a little bit of everything.
Awesome. So what would you say like your current focus right now in either this market or with projects that you've had on the line, what kind of is your direction that Core is going right now? Are you focusing on one specific type of project, or are you still kind of just have that wide range of some single families, some larger multifamilies, and then healthcare projects in between? What's your outlook there?
Yeah, I think the bulk of our project, I would say our average project is probably about a 20-unit building that has a vacant commercial element to it. Is the most generic thing that we work on. But yeah, we focus. We also tend to grow with our developers too. A lot of the developers that we were doing a house here and there with are doing now multifamily stuff. So that's always really interesting to see not just newer clients come through, but then see clients level up. It's really exciting.
Yeah, we talk about in the Jumpstart training, make that connection with the good contractor or the good architect you really like, and then they're going to take you, to the next project, and you'll take them where you go. So it's nice, symbiotic relationship. So
Yeah.
that's great.
And that's something that we try to focus on, is like building a relationship with our client and like growing with them too ourselves. They're not the only ones growing.
Right. So specifically, like, what services do you provide for the developer? Is it just architecture services? Is it just that, laser scanning due diligence period? What is kind of when you come to a client, what do you propose to them that you're going to help them out with on the project?
Yeah, so I would say most projects start with a client comes to us with a lot or something, and they want to see what they can put on it. So we'll do if it's something that's relatively simple that can be calculated just by the zoning code with the square footages, we can just tell them pretty quickly. If it's something more complicated, we'll give a proposal to do just a feasibility, so just stacking blocks together to see how units would stack, and then kind of go from there. So a lot of yeah, a lot of initial feasibility studies.
Cool. And then are you kind of working with developers all the way through the construction phase to the end
Yeah,
of finishing, and then once the project's complete, that's where you take a step out?
yeah. We go as much as the client is willing to pay for. It's
Yeah.
there's kind of like the three-part relationship between the contractor, the client, and us. A lot of times our clients are the builders too. So in those cases, a lot of times when they pull the permit, they might have a handful of questions throughout the construction process, but for the most part, we hand it off at permit. Then there's clients who do have that more traditional relationship where we're a little bit more involved with CA. We have meetings, or we have projects where we'll have a meeting once a week throughout construction. We'll have ones that, oh, you're done? I didn't even know you broke ground, So it varies based on the client. Like, we will provide as much as a client needs or wants, or
Gotcha.
if they want to do it themselves, we can hand it off as well.
Cool. All right, so let's dive into the topic for tonight, and that is project feasibility. And when that term pops into my head, I think about a lot of different kind of categories that I could look at feasibility for. So I think, like, is this financially feasible, right? Like, do we have enough money to get this done, or is it going to be too expensive and not possible? Or quality feasibility, like, are we going to be able to make this look good? Right? Is this, or time feasibility? So is this going to be able to be done within a time frame that is acceptable to my lender or the market or whatever? So what is Core Design's outlook on feasibility? And you guys had mentioned a Venn diagram that you sort
Yeah.
of that helps you look at projects feasibility. So could you explain that to us and kind of give
Yeah,
your
I mean, you touched on all three bases of that. So essentially, if you think about it as like a three-part Venn diagram where you have time, money, and quality. Every single project falls somewhere on that. And it just depends on the project. Like, sometimes an opportunity comes up and you have to move quick. So maybe you have to spend a little bit more to get to your finish line. Or vice versa. So maybe something fell in your lap, but you can sit on it a little bit. So you can take the time to do it right. Um, you have to kind of decide for yourself as you're going through a project, like, what do you really need to get out of it at that point? And we can assist with any of that.
Mhm. Cool. And then I guess in respect to each specific area of that, like quality feasibility, like what sorts of things do you do to make sure that or what sorts of things do you recommend a developer do to analyze whether the quality is going to be sufficient enough to make a profit?
Right. So we can I mean, as far as the market and like the after repair value and stuff, we shy away from that. We're gonna let the developers run their numbers on that, because, to be honest, a lot of them are very different and have different outlooks. But as far as taking the project through, we define our timeline, and then on every job we have this master checklist of everything you need to do to get your permit. And we'll check off what we provide and what needs to be provided that we don't. So that way, if you need to make a connection, he's like, oh, you need to get a special inspector, you need to get a geotech engineer, you need to get civil on board. And we can point you in the way that to the parties that you might need. We're not going to say use this engineer. We have a bunch that we work with, and we play nice with everybody. But we'll give you some names of people that can handle the things you need. So you'll know from jump all of the stuff that you need to do. and what you can expect from us.
Great. Great. And before we move on, I just want to remind everybody that we do have a Q&A that we're going to have at the end of our conversation here. So be sure to submit any questions you have using the Q&A function on Zoom, and we'll get to them around 7:45 once we wrap up with the content here. Sorry, Mark. Back to our conversation about, I want to talk about financial feasibility now. So are you helping developers kind of budget at all? Are you providing like estimated cost ranges, or what is your role in the financial analysis?
For the most part, it's the soft cost stuff. As far as the hard stuff goes, we don't really get into that as much. We can help forecasting the timeline, which always affects the budget.
Gotcha. So you're kind of use like your references for how your people you worked with have how long they take to complete stuff, and you kind of like recommend that to your clients' timelines.
Yeah, and how long it takes to get to the city, because honestly, that is like, oddly enough, the biggest holdup for us.
Yeah.
You would think the hardest part is building it. I think the hardest part is getting through the city.
Yeah. Sure. And I think that's definitely a valuable thing to provide for people, is not like a list of referrals or strict recommendations of this is who we want you to use, but just like places for people to touch base and kind of give them a reference for what's out there and available. I mean, we do the same thing at Jumpstart. Our number one question is, do you have a list of contractors we can call? And we're like, we there's a lot of contractors who work with Jumpstart, but it's really hard to maintain a list of that.
Right.
So, okay, let's now move on, and I want to talk about sort of when the need for a design expert or architectural expert like yourselves is triggered at a project. So you mentioned that you work on single family row homes up to large multifamily or commercial developments, but within any type of project, there's a scope. So it could be cosmetic rehab or a full gut rehab, or somewhere in the middle with a moderate rehab. What sorts of projects do you typically think will, need an expert involved, and what sorts of triggers, can take place on that project that should alert people of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think all projects can be improved by having a design professional take a look at it up front. But gone are the days of the easy permit. So, even a single family, if you're moving around walls, you need to provide a floor plan to the city. So you'll need to have someone survey your existing conditions and draw it up. You used to be able to, in a single family, when you were just doing it, you could just file just the paper permit, and now the city wants to see floor plans for everything. So honestly, anything more than like replacing floors and painting walls, you're gonna need architectural services of some sort.
Yeah, and I hear you bringing up the permitting process a lot, and I think that's super important to highlight. On people should reach out for help on that process if they don't know what they're doing, and permits are an extremely important part of the process, especially for new developers to kind of understand what it's like, and to be involved in it. So I think that's great that you guys kind of offer that, like you said, a list of what we do and what you're going to need to do to get this completed. That's important, I think. And especially, you're saying, I hear easy permits are less and less frequent than I think I saw them even a couple of years ago. Well,
I think now if you're not going to occupy the home, I think you need the floor plan. If you're going to occupy it, I think you still can pull the paper permit. So if you're doing like some sort of house hack or something to jumpstart your development, which is always a great way to get started, but you can get away with that, I think, on that. But once you're developing something in an LLC for for commercial purposes, I guess, if you're going to either sell it or rent it, that's when you need to have someone draw up your plan.
Gotcha. So on the topic of the city, why don't we talk about some specific like zoning and permitting, or more so, I guess, license, or not licensing, but code requirements that people can expect to encounter. I have a couple topics here I just want to move through, and maybe if you can give me your fast facts or what people should know about it. The number one topic that I believe we'll probably get some questions about is zoning. So that is a huge issue for jump starters, especially when they're trying to do multifamily conversions, or make a duplex out of a RM1 zoned single family home, or some misalignment like that they need to take care of. What do you think people should know about that process? And if they do encounter it, how can they be realistic about that time, money, and quality situation?
Yeah, I think the first step always, once you have a project that you've identified as something you want to look at, if it's in the Philadelphia area or the Philadelphia border, you want to go to Atlas, Philadelphia's Atlas website. That is a map of the city, and you can find out the existing owner information, and then the zoning information is all right there. So I know the majority of your clients are doing row. Oh, I see shared it. Great. Um, the um, the majority of your clients are doing like a row home-ish style lot, whether it's a multifamily or the first thing you look for is anything that is RS something is going to be residential single family. Anything that is zoned RM is multi. So right there, just looking at it before you do any of the calculations or dig into the zoning code, you know whether you can put multiple units on it or it's only one. That is like the first thing that I think you would want to identify in the zoning.
Great. And if I could just ask a clarification, like I think people might be familiar with a zoning attorney, and
Mhm.
people recommend that when you're dealing with zoning issues. How do your services in the zoning department differ than what a zoning attorney would do?
Yeah, you need the zoning attorney when you're doing something that doesn't meet the zoning code. So that's something, if we're doing something what is considered by right, that is something that can be developed on that land per the city's rules. So if you're doing that, you don't necessarily need a zoning attorney. But anytime you want to do something differently than what the city prescribes, you need to obtain a variance, and you will absolutely need to hire a zoning attorney to do that. Again, unless it is your home. You can do it. You can represent yourself if it is a single family that you are living in, but anything that is multi or you're developing to sell or rent, you will need to bring an attorney to the hearing to represent yourself.
Right. Now, for by right projects, I think there's sometimes a misconception that because it's zoned, RM1, but it's set up as a single family, like I'm good to go. I don't need to do anything. But there's still a process for use changed, right? By right.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying, if it's set up for single family and it's zoned single family, you should be fine to just use.
I mean, if it's zoned RM1, right, but
Mhm,
it's set up as a single family and you want to rehab it and rent it as a duplex,
mhm.
by right doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything, right? There's still
Correct. Correct. Yeah. You need to file for both the zoning, which is use, and we say envelope control, right? Like, so how tall your building is, how wide your building is, like the dimensional stuff. And then use, right? So that is whether it's a single, a multi, a duplex, a triplex, or whether it's even, there's small like commercial lots too. So whether you think of like maybe the row homes along Girard Ave, that have like a commercial first floor and like an apartment or two above, or typically like a CMX2 kind of thing, a commercial mixed use.
Gotcha. So, and I think just by kind of explaining through these issues, people understand why an expert is needed because it can,
Yeah.
it can quickly
It's
get,
a lot. It is. It is.
And
it
and,
can,
and
And it's a
zoning
moving
gets in.
target too, which is also kind of frustrating. Like the city, once council passes a law, it goes into the code like right away,
right,
maybe before anything is updated. So
right.
you could file for something that you think is by right, something changed. They are constantly moving the goalposts.
And
Yeah.
I just also want to add that the zoning also takes into consideration like the streets too, right? Like so the street furniture and stuff that's just added to that on. So just keep in mind because that
Mhm.
can
Trees,
get
bike
overlooked.
racks, yeah, things like
Yeah.
that.
Certainly, yeah. Okay, so moving on, my next topic I want to get your take on is livable spaces. So I know a
Mhm.
lot of starters are, they might be finishing a basement, adding a bedroom and a bathroom, and want to get that extra square footage on their listing or on the city's assessed improvement area, or I don't know the specifics. But what do you think folks should know about livable spaces in terms of their rehab and adding and subtracting those areas?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as your listing goes, that square footage is never really going to show up. So, like on the listing, you're not going to recoup that, but you're going to have an extra bedroom or two or whatnot if you finish out that space. So, any bedroom that you place in the cellar will require an egress well, which is something that's a minimum of 3 by 3 in either the sidewalk or your rear yard, so that you can walk out and up out of. The other thing that's important is if you are discharging from a bedroom into your rear yard, single or multi now, it needs to be attached to an alley, which a lot of the row homes do have like that 30-inch wide like strip that runs between the row homes, but a lot don't. and the city won't let you put a bedroom even above ground facing your rear yard at that point. So that's why you have to get maybe a little bit creative in your, if you have a smaller home and you call it an office or a den, and then you just got to be careful about how you market it and how your tenants use it.
And I've heard, maybe you don't know the specific about this offhand, but I've heard like bedrooms that have or if there's a bathroom that's like inaccessible without going through a bedroom, that could disqualify it from being counted as a bedroom. Do you know anything about like layout decisions like that, or that would, screw up like how many bedrooms the city would, or any government organization would consider for that property?
I would say if it's only one bathroom and you have to go through a bedroom to get it, that it would be an issue. Outside of that,
Okay.
nothing in the building code, I think, would really crack down on that.
Okay. How about ceiling height? So, is there any situation where the ceiling height could be too high or too low, and how do you kind of like navigate those issues?
Well, it's never too high. I do know a lot of times in you can have a double height space. You can have as much as you. As far as if you have an existing that is at least 6'8", you can finish it, which unfortunately is like right around the line where a lot of the sellers are in Philadelphia. So then you have to make the decision: is it worth underpinning to extend your down, which is essentially building. You dig little holes around your perimeter of your building and put little piers in, and then keep on doing that until you extend your building's footprint down deeper, which is what we see a lot of our clients do to get that bedroom or two in a basement. Sometimes it's easier than going up, depending on what your zoning is. There are some cases where if you're on a smaller block and it's all two-story homes, to go up to that third story, you have to set back your front facade 8 feet. Well, if you do that in some of these smaller row homes, you're left with not really a usable space up there. So that can be kind of tricky.
Great. And moving on, staircases, relocating or adding or removing a staircase, is there like code requirements that are, are there specific permits that you need to obtain for that sort of stuff, or, how does that impact your project's feasibility?
So it's the same permit, but I think honestly, if you're walking a row home lot, or an existing row home structure, vertical circulation is the first thing you need to pay attention to. Is the one that's there viable? Do you want to keep it? Because a lot of these row homes, especially the narrower ones, have like a 28 to 30-inch wide stair. They go up and then they wrap around in the hallway. They have like 2 more steps to get up, and it is also then like a 30 or 28-inch wide hallway. So you're talking about a space that's like 5 feet wide. If you decide to remove that, you have to put in what is a code compliant stair and hallway. So then you'll have a 3-foot wide stair with your railings in your hand, and then you'll have a 3-foot wide hallway. So you might go from something that's like 4'8", 5-ish feet to something that is like 6.5, 7 feet. And in a lot that's 13, 14 feet wide, you're left with a space that you might not be able to use. So you have to be pretty creative about the vertical circulation. I would say if it's within a single family, I would most definitely try to keep the existing stairs. You can repair them or replace them in kind to what they are. But once you decide to change that design, you got to put in the full code compliant the stairs. If you're in the multifamily and that's how people are moving in and out, you might want to do it. It really is project specific, but always you have to keep in mind the pace your vertical or any of your circulation is taking up is more leasable square footage, right? So if you can walk into some of these homes and they can feel very, not necessarily spacious, but very functional. And then sometimes you can walk into like larger things that are laid out poorly and they're not functional at all. So it's really tricky.
Yeah, totally. It's one thing to look at it on paper and say, oh, that's great, there's extra rentable space. And then when you're standing in the space, you're like, this isn't great at all.
Or your doors are all opening into a space and you can't furnish a room.
Right. Okay, so next, during our prep call, you had mentioned this term, and I was unfamiliar with it, but light and air requirements. And obviously light, sunshine, and air, wind. What does that? What are the requirements that the city will expect of a project?
Yeah, so essentially every bedroom needs to have an egress window, which is more even than the requirements for light and air. And you need to also make sure, again, if it's facing your rear yard, that you can get out to your right of way, which is this is out to a street essentially. If people don't know what that means, and so that's why a lot of row homes are laid out in kind of an L-shaped floor plan where you have like the big bedroom up front, a tiny bedroom in the side, and then it kind of jogs in. So that tiny bedroom can have that rear-facing window to get that light and air in. Where when you're building a lot of the newer ones to maximize your footprint, they build a lot more square shaped homes, and then you end up either having to cut that room in half in the back, which can be really tough, depending on the width of your lot.
Right. Right. Okay, great. Well, you definitely covered a lot of information there, and I think those are just little snapshots about what a design expert takes into account when they're helping you with a project. And thanks for highlighting all that for me. The next thing I want to ask is about the property walkthrough phase. So, a lot of new developers might be looking at like several projects at once, and going out and doing walkthroughs with contractors or realtors, and really, from the inexperienced perspective, might not really know what they're looking for, and that can be an intimidating thing, I think, for a lot of people. And I want to get your perspective from somebody who's lives and breathes kind of analyzing the feasibility of these projects on a daily basis. How would you recommend that a jump starter or a new developer prepares for these property walkthroughs, and how can they make it as effective as it should be, and not something that they're intimidated by or nervous about the results of?
Mhm. I mean, I think the first thing is walk through as many as you can, even if it's not a deal. If there's an open house in your neighborhood, just go see what people are doing to kind of familiar. Because it is true, once you get into, again, like the specific like row home-ish kind of development, there's only so much you can do in 16 feet. A lot of these layouts are very, very similar. So you can see what works and what doesn't. Then as far as who you can bring can get a little bit tricky. Would it be great to bring a contractor with you every time? Yeah, but if you keep on taking your contractor through and these things don't turn into jobs, they're not going to walk through it with you.
Sure.
Unless you offer to pay them to do it. Maybe you can say like, hey, if you want to do this walkthrough with me, I'm really interested in this project, and maybe negotiate a fee with them just to do the walkthrough. But if you keep on if you I don't want to say waste time. It's not a waste of time, but if you're not as cautious about your contractor's time, it could be problematic.
Yeah.
I as a developer myself, when you walk into places, think of what is big picture problems. Are there structural problems? Is it just like a couple floor joists? Maybe that's something that can be fixed. Is a wall falling forward? Maybe that's something that you don't necessarily want to get into, unless you have experience with those kind of things. I would say when you get into places and they smell bad, you should smell money, because that's something that no one's going to want to. People want more finished homes to sell. You can get in there and bleach the place and clean and put a new coat of paint on, a new floor down. You can get through that really quickly.
Great. Yeah, I think those are all great tips, and I really want to double down on what you said about the more you go through, the more you'll know. I mean, and the more you'll see how, like you said, little there is to do within a row home. It's like there's a reason why 4 out of every 5 row homes you walk through have the same bedroom, and bathroom layout on the same block. So yeah, I think those are great tips, and hopefully people find these helpful. What do you think? And I totally understand your point about not bringing the contractor along unless, or sorry, not bringing them along, but not bringing them along unless you're going to be able to follow through and make use of their time. Is there anybody else you'd recommend kind of engaging at that property walkthrough phase? Like, is that something you do with developers, or would you recommend that people limit the amount of parties they're bringing into that?
I mean, it really varies project by project. I think exposing yourself to as much as you can. Honestly, a lot of them, with listings and photos, you can send listings to a contractor to look at or whatnot. And you're not going to get like the exact price, but maybe you can get the idea of what needs to
Sure.
get done.
And
we
correct me
can.
if
Oh, sorry. Go.
I was just gonna say, correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes even before a walkthrough, we'll get an address and like we'll like look at a project for a client and be able to advise them what they can put there, and they can take that information and go compare it with what they see on site.
Yeah. If they want to run something by us before they get out there, that's great too.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sure it's never harmed to just kind of run something by you so it's on your radar. So, you've done a little bit of even pre-due diligence before you get involved. So, yeah,
Mm.
that's great. Okay, so last question I have here, or one of the last I have, and let me remind everybody that we do have a Q&A, and I see we've gotten a couple of them stacking up there. So thanks everybody for submitting your questions, and you can do so by using the Zoom Q&A tab on your toolbar there. So my next question is about the checklist for completing, checklist for determining whether a project is feasible or not. What would you guys say is the point at which a developer should know, okay, I feel confident about all the due diligence I've completed. I've spoken with experts. This is feasible. Should you just be waiting for somebody to tell you it's feasible, or should you, set up some thresholds for yourself, or what would you recommend as a checklist for new developers, who might not know the full process but want to make sure they're calling it quits at the right point?
I think this goes back to when we talk about like walking through as many homes as you can. I think running the numbers on everything is till it becomes muscle memory, right? So you want to try to get a handle on your after repair value, what's being leased in the area. There are different tools. Like I don't know if you guys like the bigger pocket people, like they have checklists and calculators and stuff. And if you Google them, you can find them. But it needs to be a muscle memory thing, right? So that you get to the point where you get familiar with the city, you get familiar with specific neighborhoods, and you know what you think you can get for rent on that, right? You can check Renometer, you can check Craigslist for like what things are listed for, what things are going for. And when you get kind of a handle on that, and again, it's just doing it over and over and over again. There's no easy way to do it. You just got to do it. So something that like might take you like a half hour the first time to run all your numbers, if you just keep on doing it, you're going to be able to just look at something and be like, that's right. This one's a home run. This one's not, like.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's great advice. So the last topic I want to talk about here before we move into the Q&A is, you mentioned it earlier, Jeffy, the technologies that are available for developers. So it definitely seems like core design takes full advantage of those technologies, and laser scanning is something I think is interesting to share with jump starters, as yeah, I've never seen it happen, but I'm super intrigued.
Yeah.
I was impressed. My coworker a couple weeks ago showed me their measure, like just a simple like point. And
the tape laser.
Yeah. I was like, that's crazy.
So like imagine that, but multiplied by millions, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
So
tell us
yeah. So like laser scanning used for architecture. Think like Mission Impossible movies, and they're just like put the thing in the room and it's like, and now they have an image of a room that they're rotating around. Essentially, that's what laser scanning is. It's a non-contact technology that captures 3D data of your existing environment, of the building that in our case, the existing building, right? Or the space. How does it work? It works by emitting laser beams that are bounce off of a surface and come back and are compiled to create what's called a point cloud. A point cloud, the best way that I have been able to explain it to someone is if you know what pointillism paintings are, is like little images created by tiny dots. It is that, but on a 3-dimensional scale.
Cool. And then and you're using that to make drawings, take measurements,
yeah.
kind of you build a digital.
So every survey that we do the laser scanner on.
Yeah. So it went from this like high-end project that we used it for tolerances, and now we've realized the positive of it, right? So the positive being that back in the day, we would send 2-3 people to a large property to do a hand survey using pull tape or the little laser tape, and it would take us a day or two, maybe more, and you're sending two people. With this laser scanning technology, we're able to be so much more efficient and precise in one shot, where you send one person and it takes them a day, maybe very rarely more.
Going back to
that cuts down on our surveying fee, because
it cuts down on the surveying fee. It also is what would happen. I think Mark and I were talking about this on our call with you before, where we reduce human error too, because when we're going through hand drawing this, you might forget to write down the measurement or whatever, and this gives us a picture of the building always. So whatever it sees, it records. So we can't really miss something unless we just didn't scan it.
Yeah. That's interesting to hear. Like you kind of discovered it on a higher level, probably one of your healthcare projects, I'm sure, but and then realized its applicability to a row home or any sort of development that's being completed at any level. So I think that's awesome, and that's something that you'll complete at what phase, I guess, after people hire you and get you involved, or do you do that before or after?
Yeah, no, we would be under contract to
Cool.
to document the existing conditions.
Cool.
And then one other thing we're going to
mistaken-
touch on too is
sorry.
what you catch. Sorry, you want to about what you catch.
I was just
that
going to
you-
say, sometimes people just hire us to get that phase started, right? In the due
Yeah.
diligence period of like,
Right.
hey, can you scan this and get us something
Right.
to
So
work on?
similar to just asking an architect to draw up designs or plans or something, right? It's just like, part of that. Yeah, that's cool.
But I think what Mark was going to touch on too was, we were talking about like the width of stairs, or if something is a wall is collapsing, and sometimes that stuff is happening and you don't see it. It's very not noticeable to your eyes or when you're walking. We were working on a project recently, and I took the point cloud and just was like cutting a section through it and noticed that the building was smiling. And that was something that, as the whole time I was there for a whole day, didn't really notice it as bad. So we're able to, using a laser scanner, provide that information to our client too, saying like, hey, something's off here.
Reframing this whole thing.
Yeah.
That's huge. Yeah, I think the earlier that you can catch issues that like that, the better. I mean, preventative action, and especially with budgeting, if you know that you're going to have that $10,000, brick pointing as earlier rather than like before you've, requested your last draw from your lender, like you can save yourself from some bad situations. So I think that's great.
And even on historic projects too, we're able to like, we had a project where we needed to like document the facade, and we're able to like provide that at a higher level because of the laser scanning.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. Great. Well, that is all of my questions. And I think this is a good point to move into the Q&A. Any closing remarks or anything you want to add before we jump into the questions? Thanks for that great conversation.
Yeah,
I just wanted to thank you for inviting us here. I'm hoping that what we're providing is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is. And I think any sort of expert or person in any field of the industry that we can get in front of Jumpstarters is hugely beneficial. We'll definitely, if it's all right with you guys, send out your contact info tomorrow and let people know how they can get in touch and follow up with any questions, or if they want to connect and hire you for a project, they can certainly do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely feel free, if you do have questions, to send it our way.
Wonderful. All right. Speaking of questions, let's jump into these that were submitted so far. And just a reminder, folks, you can use your Q&A tab on the toolbar at the bottom of Zoom, and we'll get to them as they come in here. But the first one I want to ask you guys is from Ina, and they said, how should one go about choosing a good architecture firm? So other than just saying hire me, how would you recommend that people vet their design architecture expert, or where should they begin that search? Should they? I'm sure it's the same as other contractors, but from somebody who's doing it, what do you think people should look for?
I think always the best thing is word of mouth. So if you're going to meetups, if you're speaking with people from Jumpstart, if you're doing it's all about, we talked about building your team, right? Like that's one of the biggest things in real estate development. And then that way you tell everyone what you do, right? Is the biggest thing, because you don't know who might have a lot that maybe you could pick up, or you don't know someone who's worked with an architect that might be terrible or might be great. It's the same thing with every sort of consultant. It is tough online. You look at websites. I mean, most of the websites look great, so it's hard to. I don't.
I would say in the world of social media, there's that too, right? Like everyone's playing the game on Instagram and other platforms, like looking at who other developers are using or whatever. That goes back to word of mouth. It's just like a different.
Yeah. No, but I think you guys are right. And it's on that social media point, like I think it's equally, you need to be cautious of the deception that can be done on there, but it's also a really great way to find good people. And if you can filter that out in your brain, say, this person's BSing, this person looks like they're doing good work and seems genuine, it can be useful. Yeah. Okay, next question here comes from Melissa, and she says, how much do you charge for a basic floor plan for a typical 1,100 square foot property? So for those row homes, what is your estimate? I know it's project by project and probably hard to give an estimate, but for your standard row home floor plan design, what would you guys be looking at cost wise for people's estimates?
I mean, that's really difficult. I think we need to see the address. We need to see where it is. We need to see it. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. Um,
Sure,
yeah,
okay, understood.
I would love to be able to say like, like come in and like pick off the menu, but it's not exactly how it works.
Totally
Um,
understood. Uh,
sorry.
It's okay. The next question, also from Melissa, she says, "Do you help with decision making when it comes to additions, and what would work for the property?" So we kind of discussed a little bit of that earlier with third story additions or back rear additions. If you could just kind of reiterate some of that info, or how could you help people with their decision to, should I add that third floor or should I add that rear extension?
Yeah, absolutely. We can take a look at any space, and we can say like what this really needs is this. What can you do by right? Is this worth pursuing a variance to get this one thing? Again, project specific, but yeah, we do provide that advice on whether it's worth going for. And it's tough too. Like it's you want it always to be by the numbers, but some of the stuff's emotional too. So it's if you really, really want something, like what do it goes back to our Venn diagram from the beginning. Like, what are you willing to pay for it? Like if you really want it this way, it might cost you more or it might take longer. This might be the easiest way to get in. We run into a lot of projects once you get to a fourth story in multifamily residential, you need to provide two stair towers. So sometimes our clients are trying to max out these four-story buildings with two stair towers, an elevator, and like we might want to take a step back. It's like, hey guys, if you do like a couple less units, do one stair tower and do a three-story building, your ROI might work out better. Just run the numbers that way so we can point you in that direction. We're not going to do the exact calculation, but we've definitely run into that before. We permitted recently we got a variance to do this 5-story project, and it's a really narrow corner lot, so we're able to pull it off, but like it's really going to be a tough build, where if they pared back their scope, did a 3-story, they could have one stair tower. Now you're maybe adding 350 square foot at each floor too. So it's tough.
Yeah,
And again,
you're looking at the bigger picture for people and kind of like giving them the alternative option of like, hey, you could do this, suggest it, and yeah, I think that's helpful. It's like nobody is going to be able to like make a snap judgment about that decision, so it helps to consider all the alternatives and have somebody like you on their team to do it.
Yeah, we do that a lot in the feasibility phase too, where it's like, hey, run this like this. Hey, run this like this. This is what it ends up looking like. And sometimes we even surprise ourselves once you start drawing it out. Things kind of click together sometimes, and sometimes they don't, where you're like, I thought this would have worked. Once I put it on paper, it really doesn't, or vice versa. Like, I didn't think this was going to work, but this is great.
Yeah, right. And somebody else has a question here about rooftop decks. And are there any specific zoning requirements, if any, that allow that on top of a third story addition or anything? I know you mentioned a setback, right? Is that also?
Yeah, so there's a lot of zoning that dictates that. In most residential districts, you can do roof decks by right. There are some overlays that, like specifically the Strawberry Mansion one, is not allowing any more roof decks in the Strawberry Mansion overlay. But essentially, your roof deck has to be at least 5 foot back from the front right of way. Your pilot house, which is the access structure, if it sticks up, there are ones that are wells essentially that come down. We typically try to almost always do pilot houses, so we don't want to like build a bathtub in our building anywhere, you know. It has to be at least 5 foot from your rear property line or your rear building, not property line, and then it has to be at least 10 feet from the front. That's the hut structure that houses your stairs. Nothing else can go in your pilot house but the stairs and the landing. We have clients try to sneak powder rooms in places and wet bars, and it runs into a lot of trouble. They can only be 125 square feet, and there's no other uses allowed in there.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, that is all the questions, unless any more get submitted here as I start to wrap things up. But thank you, everybody, for submitting those, and hope you reach out to Jeffy and Mark in case you have any other follow-ups. And like I said, we'll be sure to give out their contact information. But yeah, Jeffy, Mark, thank you so much. This has been great. I really think this was beneficial for folks, and I'm glad we got to dive into the different areas of feasibility as rather than just a high level like yes or no, this is a good project, this is a bad project. There's a lot that goes into it, and I think you guys have proved that an expert is necessary to help you with those decisions for a lot of projects that Jumpstarters are looking to rehab.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Real quickly, I just want to let you know that our next Jumpstart event is taking place in a couple weeks on December 20th, and it will be our think tank, which is hosted in person at our office. Jeffy and Mark, if you're in the area, we'd love to see you there. But it's basically a networking event with a town hall style presentation section. So we'll allow folks to come up and ask questions and discuss their specific issue in real estate that they're facing, and experts in the audience and on our panel will be able to provide resources, answers, and then we'll have a networking with pizza and soda at the end. So that's your last little push to come. But, at our office, 4701 Germantown Ave, and it's on the first floor there in our event space. Starts at 7 p.m., but we'll open the doors up at 6:30, so you can come in and say hi to folks. And registration is required, so please RSVP. It's at jumpstartgermantown.com/events. And lastly, we are going to have the recording of this JUMPinar available on our website at jumpstartgermantown.com/library, and we'll also edit a audio only version of it, which will be available on streaming services. And yeah, I think that's all I got for housekeeping. Thanks again, Jeffy and Mark. I really appreciate you spending the night with us, and hope folks enjoyed the session.
Thank you very much.
Us.
All right. Thanks, all. Have a good one.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.